Welcome to another presentation of the Cognitive Security Institute. The views expressed by presenters are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of, or endorsement by, the Cognitive Security Institute or any affiliated organizations. Humanity stands at the threshold of an unprecedented technological revolution. Advances in AI-powered autonomous systems, direct neural interfaces, and immersive digital connectivity promise to redefine human capabilities. However, this transformation also presents profound ethical, security, and existential challenges that demand proactive and thoughtful action. The decisions we make now will shape the trajectory of our species and determine whether we thrive in this new era or falter under its weight. You may learn more about cognitive security and how to become involved in this rapidly growing community by visiting our website at cognitivesecurity.institute. If you find these talks interesting, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. We hope that you enjoy this presentation. Dr. Margaret Cunningham is an applied experimental psychologist who focuses on performance, security, human factors engineering, and behavioral analytics. Previously, Dr. Cunningham was a senior staff behavioral engineer at Robinhood, a behavioral scientist and product manager at Forcepoint, and a human systems integration consultant for the Department of Homeland Security.
Hello, this is Dr. Matthew Cunningham, the Executive Director of the Cognitive Security Institute. This presentation draws upon principles from positive psychology to provide strategies for recognizing and reinforcing effective security behaviors in organizations. Far too often, the urgency of fixing what's wrong prematurely discounts what's going right. Effective solutions need to build on the strengths within our current systems while fixing existing problems.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. First, my name is Margaret Cunningham, and I'm super excited to be here. A lot of people ask me about my background, and one of the things that I can confidently say is that it has been completely non-traditional. So my academic roots are in applied experimental psychology, and I specialized in human factors engineering and cognition. In essence, my huge passion was measuring people's stuff, and I didn't want to do it in a lab. I wanted to do that in the real world. And so because I wanted to be working in the real world, my career took me on many, many journeys. I have, stomped around on Navy ships and worked with the Coast Guard. I have assessed new technologies for first responders in operational scenarios. I've built cybersecurity analytics software looking for insider threats. I've also created hugely holistic data security and privacy plans for a fintech company. I even have spent time helping robots navigate hospital hallways. And honestly, I think one of the most amazing things is figuring out all of the different intricacies of when you can get on an elevator. And the big common thread here is that I love finding out ways that things go wrong, how people injure themselves, why technologies fail, who might be the most likely to steal, hurt others, or more. And that doesn't really sound very positive. When I talk to people outside of the field about my career, they ask me all the time, like, why are you in a good mood? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, do you get a thrill out of all of this stuff that's going wrong? And that's not what it is. And for me, I think spending so much of my life and my career identifying where things go wrong, I also have noticed that a lot of times things are going right, and things are going right despite all of the stuff. And that to me means that there are amazing people, amazing systems, and a lot of them are working. And my opinion here is that we don't do a great job of capturing what's working, and we should. Another really fun bonus on working on this stuff is that, the ambiguity, the discomfort, the impossible problems also bring together a pretty core team of creative, caring, and what I may say, brilliant people. And it keeps me going, and I love that. So, thanks for indulging in a little bit of my backstory. Today, I want to go on a new journey together, and I'm sharing thoughts on something that I've had in my mind for a long time, but I haven't presented before. And it's the critical importance of recognizing and leveraging what's going right in our environments. So to get us there, we're going to go through a brief history of positive psychology and why it matters. We're going to talk about how security professionals can learn from this field's evolution, and then we're also going to dig into some practical strategies for identifying, amplifying, and scaling that positivity in your environment. And this is a small enough group, and my goal is for you to walk away and try it. So take some of this stuff and go try it, or see what you think and go try it. And if it works, tell me about it. If it doesn't work, tell me about it. But I'd love to see if there's a way for you to take a few of these little nuggets and give it a whirl and see what happens. So I really encourage you to try that. So we're going to start here in reframing security mindsets by looking at lessons from positive psychology. So I want to start from the beginning, and I know this is a little bit silly, but please let me have fun. It's Wednesday. We should all have a little bit of fun. So what do babies have in common with security practitioners? Besides crying, staying up all night, lots of problems and fears, it's a little bit more than that. Actually, people, wherever we arrive, show up with a really complex inherited environment, and there's not much we can do about it. Security practitioners often land in an inherited environment with tools that might not work, problems that you might not understand, policies and cultural factors that are deeply ingrained in, how your company works. And so you've got these predetermined frameworks, and maybe it's a genetic predisposition for a kid, or, you have these pre-existing architectures that just aren't scratching the itch for you when you're walking in trying to solve a problem, and we have to adapt. So children, like professionals, have to adapt and acclimate to these systems and protocols. And this is, where we start to deviate. Because with kids, we start celebrating milestones, we start looking for progress, we are cheering them on. And in security, we don't do that. We are really, really focused on oh, you missed a thing, there's a problem, there's a breach, you lost something. And where we intuitively understand that, focusing only on this badness or these, issues with kids would be very counterproductive, we don't offer ourselves that same grace within these environments that truly, most of the time, aren't of our own design. And so this is something that I can't shake. We don't always have what we need, but we're kind of forced to work with what we have. And if we don't start looking at the positive and start finding those strengths, it's not going to be super easy to do that. And, I apologize for my two ugly tables, but I do want to walk through my two very ugly tables. And so I want to take you on a little bit of a psychology journey. Maybe some of you out there are highly familiar with this, but historically in psychology, we relied heavily on the medical model. In this approach, which took hold in the mid-20th century, we treated mental health like physical health. We identified and treated specific illnesses or disorders. Doctors were looking at what's wrong, let's fix it, let's manage these symptoms, and then we're going to return to what normal is. And they didn't really think about much else. Just let's fix what's wrong with you. We're going to find what's wrong with you. We're going to focus on what's wrong with you. And so in recent years, we've seen a rise of, a little bit of a new perspective, positive psychology. And in this approach, we're taking a different angle. Instead of zeroing in on problems, we started emphasizing things like strengths and potential. The idea isn't just to address the issues, but to help people fully and truly thrive and flourish. And one of the biggest challenges and differences between these two approaches is that the traditional model tends to be highly reactive. You wait, there's a problem, you intervene. In positive psychology, in contrast, it's about prevention, building resilience, and understanding problems before anything arises. Another thing that I think is really critical is how people experience this. In the medical model, people felt a lot of stigma. There's stigma attached to a diagnosis, and they feel labeled or boxed in. And in positive psychology, it's much more empowering and focuses on recognizing unique talents and abilities. So we can also see a change in what the approaches aim for. The medical model typically looks to standardized diagnosis and a treatment plan, consistency across cases. In positive psychology, and this is actually a real challenge, we're much more interested in subjective measures of well-being. And so one thing that I'll note is that, this shift doesn't mean that the medical model is obsolete. Both approaches have their place, but understanding the evolution can really change how we think about health and growth. So let's take this a little bit step further, probably more into our interest zone here. But I think it takes to take a minute on, where are we now? And I say, where are we? Most of us, because there are people working in this field trying to make it better, very deeply entrenched in building positive security cultures. But just as psychology evolved, cybersecurity needs to evolve. We're at this crossroad. On the left, on this table, we have most of us in the security world. It has a striking resemblance to the medical model that we just discussed. Our focus has been on vulnerability, the illnesses of our systems, and the orientation is threat-centric, constantly identifying and trying to mitigate threats, and it mirrors the medical model of centering on pathology and disorder. Our approach in cybersecurity has been largely reactive. We respond when threats or breaches are detected, much like how traditional psychology intervenes only after a disorder is diagnosed. Yes, we do talk about shift left. No, we have not done a great job getting there. So in terms of treatment, we patch, we block, we contain, and this is similar to managing the symptoms that we see in the medical model. So the experience for professionals has been one of constant vigilance, dealing with alert fatigue, dealing with burnout, and this is a parallel to that stigma and that narrow focus that is damaging within that medical model of psychology. All of our outcomes are measured by incident metrics and, mean time to mitigate and all of this stuff, eliminating threats, counting what's happening. And it is, again, similar to how the medical model focuses on standardized diagnoses and symptom reduction. When we deviate and we go to this right side and we think about where we can go, our potential is huge. So instead of vulnerabilities, we can also focus on resilience and adaptability. Our orientation can shift from being capability-centric to being capability-centric, and we can start building robust, error-tolerant systems. Honestly, I love understanding how people make mistakes. We're pretty predictable. We make a lot of the same types of mistakes. We definitely can make error-tolerant systems. Anyway, so this is again how we can, draw that parallel into emphasizing strengths and flourishing. So as we become more proactive, we can start making a plan and building out preventative measures and cultivate that sense of well-being. Once we can start getting there, people may feel a little bit less burnt out, hypervigilant, etc. And they may start believing in themselves and believing that they are empowered to make changes that are positive and they may find ways to uniquely identify their potential. So when we think about these outcomes, business continuity, operational resilience, and also a sense of fulfillment is important. And a lot of security people say that everybody needs to be on the security team. And I've got to say, I don't really want to join a team that's burnt out, angry, negative. I really would love to join a team that feels empowered and has a sense of fulfillment in what they're doing and feels like they're making a difference. And I do think that we can get closer to that. So, you're also right that it's impossible to do everything this way. And, like all things, there is a balance. What I know is that we cannot afford to stick our heads in the sand either way. We cannot ignore real security threats, but we also have to make a much bigger effort to look beyond our problems and find some positivity. So today, I'm going to acknowledge the problems lightly, but I do think that we do have time to spend an outsized focus on the positive side, on building resilience, fostering adaptability, and creating a proactive security culture. We've got to spend that time focusing on shifting towards empowerment and continuous improvement. So again, let me be clear, everything else matters, but we spend a ton of time talking about it, agonizing over the details, and trying to secure all the things all day long. So we're going to take this break and expand our view to include strengths and opportunities as well. Okay. So I like to come with some ideas on how to get a strange idea to work. And I like to give people some thoughts on steps they can take to get there. And I don't know what everybody's experience is on the call. I don't know where their background or expertise lies. I know some of you may be in organizations that are very, very high process, very regulated, very constrained. And some of you may be at a startup, and some of you may be students, and it's all over the map. But when we walk through these 3 steps, consider that you can make it as small as you want or as big as you want. There's nothing stopping anyone from giving some of these things a try or making it into a pilot program for a big company. So with that, I'd like to kind of dive in and talk about some of the practical things that we can do to move towards this positive shift. So I talk to a lot of people who join companies, and they dive in and they talk to everybody, mostly the security teams or major stakeholders like, the data infrastructure team or platform team or application security team and things like that. And what they come back with are a lot of problems, and we map those problems together and we do a gap analysis, and there's all these problems and we're mapping the problems, and here's another problem that we can't deal with. And I think that's great. Honestly, I think it's pretty great, but we can also do other things. So, if you're new or if you're just thinking about something like this, you can get this done in about 30 days, depending on the scale. And when we're talking about a rapid strength assessment process, I'm really finding a system to help identify positive deviance. And when I say positive deviance, we have anomalies good and we have anomalies bad. These are anomalies good. Find them. They're awesome. So finding positive deviance are finding behaviors on teams or in individuals who are making things work well despite not having additional resources. And, on a side note, there are a lot of formal methods that could help you do this, like cognitive and hierarchical task analysis, systems modeling, human error assessments, and really all of those techniques are worthy of their own space and time. But we're going to stay kind of at a high level here. So where do we start? And I think this might be, the first 30 days is kind of the hardest. Sorry to say. In my positive talk, this is actually the hard stuff. Defining focus is critical. So the first step in defining focus and objectives is to pick something pretty small. Pick 3 to 5 focus areas. Honestly, I would err on 3. Find specific behaviors that align with those 3 areas and chase them down. Find out where those things are happening. It can give you a targeted view where the strengths might exist, and it makes it so you don't have to look everywhere, just in these important areas that you've decided to look for. And this is what I'm saying, like this can be your personal side quest, and it really wouldn't necessarily have to take, 800 approvals to get it done. I do find that defining focus and objectives can be very challenging if you have a ton of stakeholders, because they want to add just one more thing. And get good at saying no to that, because you can say, great, we'll try that on the next round. But really, really being protective over the scope is how we can get these things moving. So be kind of a psycho on your scope. Do something small. Then collect and analyze the data. And honestly, this often involves talking to other human beings, okay? If you don't like talking to other human beings, that's okay. There are ways to do it, but talking to other human beings, observing how they work, thinking about metrics, digging into logs if you have them, this is where you start finding those nuggets of who or what team is performing above average and excelling underneath the constraints that we all have. This is where you find the positive deviant team or individuals who are doing something better, they're doing it more efficiently, and they're staying within a secure parameter. And so when you start identifying this stuff, sometimes it looks kind of like somebody's breaking a rule. And, I don't want to go on too long of a tangent about workarounds, but sometimes workarounds are freaking awesome. And the people who are doing a workaround are actually the highest performers doing something that makes things even more awesome for everyone. And so if you find something like, a bunch of people who have made their access control process faster, take a look, because that might be something super amazing that is really, really working for them that could be scaled. It's a positive deviant behavior. And, sometimes you almost have to check yourself to not take like a really top down, like, oh no, you've broken the rules, and step back and use a human-centered approach of like, wow, that's really working for you. And also it's working for what we need it to do. So I think that that's the biggest challenge here, besides is getting from your defined scope, getting the data, and then when you find something interesting or you talk to somebody who's doing something differently, not shutting it down, actually embracing it. Then it comes to the communication end. And, again, this is a very human thing to ask of people in a technical field. And it's not something that comes naturally for a lot of people. The beautiful thing is communication is a skill that you can work on. So there you go. Don't feel hampered by, feeling like you don't really love the communication end. But in the communication, highlight and enable what's going on in the positive deviance. Help articulate what the tools are, what the approach is, how people are receiving feedback or recognition. And, this is not something where we're enforcing more rules ever. We're just amplifying with our voices in communication what's already working. And so there you are. When you can create this avenue for understanding what's going on, you can also start building these really tiny growth metrics. And people kind of freak out when you say metrics. They're like, oh, like I don't have a dashboard. Like, I don't know SQL. What is this? Like, it really doesn't have to be anything that crazy or big. You can make small metrics, qualitative metrics are good metrics, and start establishing a way of tracking a trend of this positive behavior continuing. So by focusing on positive deviance, you're taking something that already exists, so no new friends, right? Like no new stuff. You're taking something great that already exists and you're channeling some energy and help behind it to make it happen more. You're reinforcing that positive behavior by finding it, defining it, and helping it grow. So once you do all of that, no problem. You've got to start digging in to these insights and start taking it into deeper action. So how can we expand on identified strengths? How can we create tailored interventions? Or how can we embed these secure behaviors across an organization to help make them a part of every team's daily routine? And I say every team, I know not everything transfers, but let me say it for now. And so this is where we start trying to push security as second nature instead of as an added burden. So when I say expand on identified strengths, in the first 30 days or so, we've identified key strengths, the secure behaviors that teams were already excelling at. The goal for this phase is to use those examples of positive deviance as a case study for other teams. We want to normalize the security behaviors so that they become a part of everyone else's daily routine, just as they already were for the high-performing team. This is about where we start scaling what's working rather than introducing something that's new and disruptive. Then tailored growth interventions, and honestly, I would have probably not written this on here, but AI, love it or hate it, is creating a lot of ways to rapidly prototype very, very tailored experiences and tailored ways of learning from one another. And so these types of team-specific workshops or team mentoring or self-driven learning tools can be very, very hyper-focused on your specific company, your specific teams, and highly engaging because it's so personalized. And again, I'm going to go back on measuring because frankly, I love measuring stuff, as I mentioned. And this is where, thinking about security, we are going to shift towards a more growth-oriented mindset on the metrics. So this isn't about a compliance metric. So you may have this positive deviant and you're measuring it by using traditional compliance measures. And I would say don't do that. I would say start building different metrics to capture something different, which is that positive shift. And by doing that, by creating those types of positive messages, we start to tell ourselves stories about positivity in our work in security. And I'm a firm believer that we kind of become the stories that we tell ourselves, and making those metrics anchor on positivity and the positive work of our teams, our colleagues, whatever, can help us start ingraining that narrative both into our workflow, into our minds, and into our story that we tell with data. Finally, go back to the goods, right? What do you do when you want someone to do something more? You reinforce it. Okay? We reinforce these types of behaviors because we want to keep seeing them come back. And this could be formal recognition. This could be a celebration of secure actions. This could be a feedback loop. Your mileage might vary because some people hate that recognition. And the challenge on reinforcing and rewarding positive behavior is that people are very, very different in the types of things that they find motivating and the types of recognition that they like. It's not the end of the world. it does take time to really reward and reinforce people in a way that's effective. But I'm hoping by this time you have now created some friends, some colleagues who are very excited to work on these types of positive metrics in your life. All right. Okay. So, Flourish. And I kind of like laughed at myself for using this word because I think it's a really soft word and it borderlines, edges on being slightly cheesy. And I'll say that. I think flourish is kind of a cheesy word. But I just so happened to go out to dinner on Saturday night at a place where it's a giant farm to table thing, and you go to a farm and they tell you all about all of the food that they're bringing to you. And it really hit me as I was thinking about this talk while I'm eating this fabulous dinner and listening to the guy who runs the fields. And he talked to us in depth about how he manages the soil at his farm. And he told the group, but it felt like he was talking to me directly because it was just a special experience, about all the ways they put special things into the soil to help more things grow, and the strategic stuff that goes into planning what you put into the soil to see what will grow. And if you don't do that, if you don't engage in those practices of putting good things in to get good things out, you often don't end up with a very good crop. And it hit me that that's what this is, right? We have to spend the time to find those good things and put the good things back into our company culture, into our concept of security, so that we can start getting good stuff out. Because right now there's not a lot of good things going in, and we've got to start building the good things to add. So, as we're closing out, a journey towards building a more positive security culture, amplifying what's already working is honestly like sunshine and water. We're not really looking for a theoretical solution here. This is honestly taking secure behaviors that are demonstrated by people on your team and using them as case studies, helping people model and learn those behaviors, incorporating things that are already being done into the daily routine. It's not something extra to do, but how work gets done. And then we really do need to embrace what's working and keep it up, and then go look for more. So actively search for more. Go back to phase one, expand the scope, pick another problem, find teams who might be interested in doing it, find a person who could be a champion for you. Give people an opportunity to learn outside of their domain. That's always a good one. You find really fun stuff when you learn outside of your domain. It's not about new rules. It's really about exploring your environment and finding that beauty and finding those great things that are happening. And, self-sustainability is a dream for a lot of domains. And I actually think there are a lot of things in security and in protecting companies and protecting ourselves that could become a little bit more self-sustainable with the right environmental factors. Again, we have to create those factors because right now it's not. And it is the recognition, it is the rewarding, it is building on the strengths. And it's not going to fix everything, but it's going to go a long way from minimizing security's association with negativity, fear, and consequences. If we cannot shift out of that narrative, no one wants to be on our team. It's not only about preventing failure, it's about creating a system where people can thrive and feel empowered to take ownership of parts of the security requirements for having a really, really awesome company that doesn't suffer from a lot of the problems that we see. And so, to me, this is a very, very short dive into how we can move from a culture of survival to a culture of flourishing by amplifying strengths, building on what's working, and recognizing and creating security champions, and almost like alleviating some of that burden and having this be something that people are proud to be a part of. And I think this is pushing towards making participation in security kind of fun, dare I say fun, and part of a lasting change. And I didn't want to do this, but I am going to end on the skeptic zone with my dead plant. I won't linger on it too long, but I am going to go to the skeptic zone because I know, I get it. It's true. Threats are real. Teams are overworked. Security is a cost center. We have so much to do. How are you going to do more? But it's not either or, and we've got to find a balance. I would be silly to not mention this. Like, by the way, like, how has it been working for everyone out there? Seems to be not so great. So there's not a lot to risk pushing towards positivity, especially when we emphasize the efficiency of identifying good things that are already happening versus trying to build and build and build more stuff. So I really am shooting for an odd balance of empowerment versus delusion, and encouraging people to take small steps that can potentially have some big ripple effects and broader impact where you are today. That's all I've got. And I hope this was sort of a fun break from the typical conversation on this.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation to the Cognitive Security Institute. You may learn more about topics in cognitive security by visiting us at cognitivesecurity.institute.